Hello and welcome to Of Mods and Men. This episode will be covering the FCR2 or Full Combat Rebalanced mod for The Witcher 2. As before, it's made by the same modder, a guy called Flash. He happens to also work for CD Projekt Red as well. This mod is considered by many to be an unofficial patch for Witcher 2, as it has been created by one of the developers, and many people say that this is the sort of elements that we will see in Witcher 3, although obviously we can't confirm that. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the features of this mod. The biggest element that this mod changes is the combat. The parry system is completely reworked, and now instead of holding down the guard button to parry, Geralt will now parry incoming blows automatically, both while standing still and moving, assuming you're not using an offensive move. The only exception to this is that you need to be standing still to block attacks from behind. This does not mean that Geralt will be able to block every attack coming at him. The chance of a parry is determined by the amount of hits coming at you, the frequency of the attacks, and the direction that they're coming from. The parry stance is now replaced with an active Quen stance, since you will have to be able to use Quen to block monster attacks since you can't block them with your sword, and it's also useful for if you're surrounded by a lot of enemies. Repulsed have the same mechanic now, only you have to time the repulsed with the indicator since Geralt will parry all the time. Parries for you and enemies will no longer be bouncing parries, meaning that you will be able to continue offensive combos. Higher level enemies will be smart enough to combo you if you try to spam attack them, however. What the mod aims to accomplish is to make the combat more fluid and to reduce the over-reliance of rolling in order to dodge attacks or to get around opponents' defenses. To help with this, the 50% damage bonus for attacks from behind has been removed for your attacks as well as the enemies, and enemies are also now able to parry attacks from behind. Pirouettes have been added as animations when you do dodges in addition to the default rolling dodge to help with the fluidness of combat. Overall, this brings forth a more stand-and-fight style of combat instead of the attack and roll away immersion breaking combat from before. There also have been a lot of changes in terms of balance. The changes in balance is similar to how it was done in the first FCR mod. Once again, it's more focused about getting past your enemy's defenses and armor rather than dealing with high vitalities of enemies. Dispatching enemies can be fairly quick if you use proper oils and fighting techniques. Armor is also properly represented. For instance, a late game armorless bandit will not be able to absorb more hits than a plate armored enemy in the beginning, strictly because they were met later in the game. Geralt's armors are reworked as well. The armors are split into 4 categories: leather jackets, heavy leather jackets, combat jackets, and heavy combat jackets. The heavier you go, the more protection you will get, but it will be at the cost of damage dealt, so you will have to weigh in the trade-offs for that. The higher level items that you would import from Witcher 1 are reflected to be higher quality in their stats. This may make the game easier early on, but it's also a reward for those importing a save from Witcher 1. From personal experience, I didn't have to switch out the Raven's armor set from the first game until midway through Act 2. Basically, if you like the stack changes in FCR 1, then you should enjoy them in FCR 2 since they are very similar. Quests, experience, and character building have been reworked as well. Experience can now be gained only from the completion of quests. As a result, the rewards are increased and are generally balanced to make much more sense now. For example, there are no longer any situations where a player is rewarded with 50 experience points for one quest and 2,000 for another. Quest experience is the same no matter what moral choice you may choose. This encourages role-playing over selecting a choice strictly because you get more experience, something that I'm definitely in a huge favor for. In terms of your skills, the skill tree has been completely reworked. To start, the Witcher core skills are learned by default, which, to be honest, has never really made much sense that you would have to relearn your Witcher skills. Skills now only have one skill slot instead of two like in the vanilla game. The skills have also been reworked so it's more of a quality over quantity approach. The economy and shops have been reworked as well. Shops are much more specialized now than what they were before. You'll only see trap makers making traps, armor makers making armors, and so on and so forth. The amount of armors has been reduced in-game, and many armors have been added to shops instead of rewards for quests. Costs have also been reduced overall for weapons, armor, and ingredients. The overall objective is to prevent the player from hoarding money by encouraging them to purchase items at shops. There are many more detailed changes as well, such as improved visuals for signs and magic, Geralt using his actual sword in cutscenes instead of the cutscene sword, and the wet boots in the tutorial actually weighing more than the dry boots. Check out the mod's change notes for all the changes, as I'm really only covering the major changes of the mod. Overall, I would recommend this mod to anyone really. The only real downside of the mod is that you can't pick and choose what features you want to install like you could in FCR 1, but Flash has said that the architecture of the game prevents that, since he'd have to release a mod for every possible variation to make that possible. Obviously, I would encourage players to play the vanilla game a bit first so you actually compare the changes. However, the change in the combat alone is worth it for me to recommend this to veterans looking for a change and newbies who have never even played it yet. The combat is much smoother and just feels better and more immersive, and if this is what they're planning to make the combat like in Witcher 3, then I'm more than happy to go along with that. As a quick side note, if you have not seen or heard of Total Biscuit's issue with Day 1 Gary's incident, I encourage you to watch that video. It's not only about the incident itself, but also about YouTube's crappy copyright policies that can even really screw over a small channel like mine. So I encourage you guys to watch it. I'll leave a link in the description. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys on the next of Mods and Men.
Let's be